And we're live. Hi, everybody. It's such an honor to be here and to speak with this amazing group of educators. Before we get into our content, we want to start by introducing ourselves, of course.
Yeah.
My name is Dr. Jeni Wahlig.
And I am Calvin O'Seely.
And we identify as LGBT soulmates who started out our relationship journey in a really painful way, full of repeating and unresolved issues that frankly were tearing us apart. And even though I had my PhD in couple and family therapy, and I'd been studying communication and relationships for most of my life, Cal and I could not figure out how to make things better in ours, right? We were stuck in a really painful place for years. And we see this in so many other relationships, right? It's so tough. And while we don't have time today to share our whole story with you, we will share some pieces of it. But what we will say is that it was through those struggles, like the fire of hell, right? And our stubborn determination to figure it out that we did figure out. And what we figured out not only transformed our relationship with one another, it really transformed our whole lives.
Yeah.
Our relationship, I'm happy to say, is now easy, it's fulfilling, we're connected, we have lots of fun together, and believe it or not, we're 99% conflict free. Like, for real. And that's what we call an extraordinary relationship. And it's possible, right? It's possible for everybody. And it's because of that that Cal and I have since dedicated our lives and our career to helping other couples create that type of relationship through our relationship coaching business called Powerful Love.
That's right. So what we really want to share with you today is the key to that unlock our relationship potential. It's a skill that no one has ever taught us or even talked about. And in fact, I think it's a term that
We
she
came up
with.
with.
Came up with.
Yeah.
And it's a one skill that led to the profound and lasting transformations that we experienced. And we call it empowered accountability.
Right. So let's take a minute to talk about relationships.
Yeah. So, we love personally that you've taken time this month to focus on relationships because
so important.
Relationships really are. They're so important to us, and especially the ones that we have with a life partner.
Right.
Because they offer us so much. They offer us support, companionship, recharging after a hard day. I'm sure the list goes on for you.
Yeah.
They become the foundation, really, of the dreams that we build for our, future. And they really become a part of who we are and who we become.
And Cal and I want to make the point that we believe that relationships, particularly our intimate, romantic, life partner relationships, are the most growth-inducing experiences of our lives. And I don't know about you, but we think growth is a really good thing, right?
Yeah.
Why do they create so much growth? Because our partners act like a mirror to us, right? They reflect to us so many things. And this creates what we call a contrast, right? So it's the contrast between who you are and who you want to be. That's reflected to you, right? You start to see how you want to feel as compared to how you are feeling right now, right? That, or your mirror reflects that. You start to identify what you need, what you want, and the gap between where you are and that. You start to see your expectations of the world. How you become aware of how you see the world at all and how that's affecting you, and you start to learn how you affect others, right? That's that mirror that our partner creates for us.
Exactly. And so these reflections, or this contrast as we're calling it, are really just invitations to do things like grow and expand, to identify and do your own work, to look into the mirror and become more of that person that you want to be, not necessarily the one that you're seeing.
Yeah,
to
be a better person, right?
Right. To really step into your truth and your authenticity and find what feels good and start taking steps toward it. Except that when we experience this contrast, it's really uncomfortable and it kind of sucks sometimes because it often shows up as disagreements, insecurities, conflicts, sometimes misconnection or disconnection, plain old unhappiness and unmet needs, even hurt and injury. So rather than, us seeing this as an opportunity to grow, we often just experience it as a problem or an issue within our relationships.
Yep. And when the discomfort that we're experiencing involves another person, what happens is that we interpret that other person as the cause of our discomfort, of the problem. Makes sense, right? Like, you did a thing and I feel unhappy about it. You caused my unhappiness. So we get this, right? And it looks like I am hurt because they just shut down when I was trying to talk to them. Or I'd feel more fulfilled in my relationship if they helped out around the house more. I've asked them 100 times. We can't communicate because they get so defensive, right? So what happens is we point the finger outward. We point the finger at our partner. You are the problem. You're the cause of why I feel bad right now, why I'm unhappy, and you are the solution to my feeling better. If you could just learn to communicate in this particular way, right, then we wouldn't have this problem anymore. We get to be able to resolve it. If you would just stop doing this thing that I don't like, we could stop having this conversation. If you really understood, if you actually understood, or maybe if you actually cared about me, right, then, you would agree and you would change this behavior or this decision. Is this, you guys picking up what we're putting down, right? I just need you to do this thing, and then I'd be happier.
Right. Well, I'm sure you heard a little bit, something that resonated with you, but does it sound like you? Anything familiar in there? Because if so, you're not alone. We experience the same thing. And, Jeni and I often felt fundamentally just incompatible with one another. And so we spent a lot of time feeling hurt and frustrated by how the other person was acting and wishing and hoping that they would just get it or do something different.
Yeah. And I want to reemphasize, this is really normal. This is how most people, almost all people, just kind of like automatically respond to these problems, right? So in our relationship, for example, I was convinced that if I could just help Calvin understand exactly what I needed from him, even teach him how to do this, it's largely in the realm of communication for me, right? Then he'd be able to do it and I would be happy and I'd feel more cared about and our problems would be able to be resolved, right? That was like, I told him, like, I'm practically come with an instruction manual. I'll tell you exactly what to do and how to do it. Like, why is this so hard?
Right. And for me, I felt like, hey, I have this instruction manual. I'm trying. But like, I felt like my efforts were never good enough. And like, I didn't know how to communicate the way this PhD level person wanted me to communicate. And so it just seemed like I wasn't good enough, and like, why bother? So I'd get frustrated by all of the expectations I felt like were on me from her, and I wish that she could just maybe be less serious or let things go and just accept me for who I was and what I could offer. Because, you see, we were both identifying each other as the source of hurt or frustration for one another, and wanting and wishing for the other person to be different, so that the relationship could just feel better.
Right. And, as normal as this is, what we finally found and learned in our relationship, and that I was starting to really see in my work with couples, is that pointing the finger doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. This is not the solution, right? In fact, it keeps relationships stuck. If you've ever felt like you're spinning your wheels or having the same conversation over and over again, this is probably what's happening. And oftentimes things start to get worse in your relationship. Something really important to remember here is that as you're pointing your finger at your partner, they're pointing their finger back at you, right? They're having an experience of discomfort as well, of contrast, and they are more than likely also thinking that you are the source of their discomfort, and that if you would change, they would feel better. But who's going to change first, right? And really, this gives all of our power away, right? Your happiness then becomes dependent on your partner's behaviors and whether they change or act differently or learn something. And frankly, how many of you are really motivated to change when your partner is saying, like, you are the problem, you need to be different?
Yeah, if anything, it works opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like it
more
like,
resistance.
It creates like a pullback, like a no, you. Right? And the truth is, we don't have any control over our partner. So if our happiness depends on them, but we've got no control over that, we're just stuck, right? No matter how much you ask for, explain for, fight for, protest, defend, withdraw, shut down, it's not going to convince your partner to change, right? And there are better ways more effective ways to influence them, to invite them into change, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah. So what do you do? You kind of...
Yeah, I led you in. That's what we're supposed to do, right?
Yeah. So what do you do when you're faced with these kind of conflicts and feelings in your relationship? The answer, I'm sure you can guess, is empowered accountability. So empowered accountability, like I said, was a term we came up with to basically describe the opposite of the process that Jeni just the cycle that we innately get stuck in. So we define empowered accountability as the skill of recognizing and applying one's power and responsibility to both affect and account for the conditions and experiences and outcomes of their life.
Now, we had hoped maybe we could show a PowerPoint along with this presentation, because we know that that's a lot of technical words.
It is. So in the simplest terms, what this means is owning your shift, or owning how you feel, owning how you act, owning how you think, and being responsible for that. The way
and can I just add one more thing? Yeah, and recognizing that all those pieces of you, how you show up in your how you show up in your relationship, and have an effect on what's happening in your relationship, and that's where your power is.
Right? And you'll go into that more in the next next part of our talk.
Right.
But we affectionately term it actually owning your shit, because that's really what it is. What is my shit to own in this?
It's our shortcut. It's like reminder.
Shit.
You take away anything from our presentation today, let it be, what is my shit? What is my shit here?
Right. So empowered accountability recognizes that you are a participant in how things are in your life, in your relationship, and that you alone, probably, have the power and the responsibility to change how things will be. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit more. But it invites you to slow down and take a look in that mirror to examine your role in creating your experience and what's working and not working, and identify what it is that you can do to make it better.
And we know that this is kind of a radical idea, because it effectively turns the table on how most of us make sense of our lives, and certainly of our relationships. So rather than looking outward to identify the problems for our unhappiness or our suffering, empowered accountability asks us to look inward, right? It asks us to look at how have I participated in getting here? How have I participated in having this experience in my life? And how can I take responsibility for that and for getting somewhere different, right? You've heard it takes two, and that's true. But so empowered accountability asks us, instead of in that it takes two, looking at well, you're part of this too, why don't you change? Recognizing I'm part of this, how can I change?
Right.
And we want to be super clear. What we're not saying that any kind of problems or pain or struggles in your relationship are your fault, or that you are solely responsible for fixing it, because of course it takes two, right? Both people still need to participate in a change process. But what we are saying is that you are powerful, right? You have an effect in your relationship, Anytime you do something different, you invite a different response from your partner. Now, we want to give you kind of a metaphor, an image to think about here that hopefully will crystallize this a little bit more. You know those swinging ball toy things where there's like...
It's like a desk ornament.
Yeah, right. Like just put one ball out and it goes tink, and then the other balls go tink.
Well,
One on the other end goes tink, and then it comes back and hits tink, right? This is like an illustration of the effect that we have in our relationship.
Cause and effect.
Right? So it doesn't matter which ball starts this process, right? The response of the other one continues the process. And this is how we get stuck in a loop, because, one end might say, you started this, but it was the response of that end that continues the process. So what if your partner's the ball on one end and you're the ball on the other, right? What if they do something and it tinks over to you, and instead of coming out and tinking right back, you come out and pause, right? Or maybe you swing a little bit and you come at the next ball from an angle. You're going to get something really different. And obviously our relationships are not like this little desk toy thing I'm describing, right? They're a little bit more complex than that. But I think it does really illustrate this dual piece, and how we too often focus on the wrong end, where we don't have any power, right? Empowered accountability. You are empowering yourself to take accountability for your effect here and your ability, responsibility to respond, right? In a way that is going to get you closer to the outcome you actually want, which is connection, an extraordinary relationship, fun, ease, not repeating this thing, right? You guys following, I hope. Okay.
Yeah, so here are some examples I'll give you some examples of what each of us has the power to do differently in our relationship, just to, again, further cement the metaphor into like tangible things that might show up in your relationship. So, starting with changing how you're thinking about the problem, right? The problem may not be the problem. Or taking your partner's perspective, standing in their shoes, taking in the situation of the day. Maybe taking the step to be the first to offer a repair or an apology after a conflict. Taking accountability for what your part was in the situation. Being flexible or accommodating for how your partner is different, which is basically every way. Share your truth, your needs in a more effective way. Practice acceptance of what is and not what you had hoped it would have been. Examine whether your expectations are even fair or reasonable for the situation or the moment. Take ownership of your fears, your insecurities, and your shoulds. Find other ways to meet your needs that may not impact your partner.
Right.
Just examples.
Yeah. Right, so there's so much power that each of us has to do something different, to show up differently in our relationship. And I want to give you another example from our relationship. So we were at a point of like nearly over the edge, point of no return kind of thing, right? And thank the universe, I had this like aha moment, light bulb, where I realized that if I continued to advocate for what I needed in this relationships in the way that I had been, which was essentially telling him what I needed, telling him how what he was doing was hurting me, telling him that I was unhappy, asking for more, right? Like him, that I was going to lose him. I was pushing him away. And in that moment, I made a powerful decision. And what I decided is that I was going to figure out how to be the one to change and do something different in our relationship. Now, mind you, I didn't have any of this language for empowered accountability. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I couldn't keep doing what I had been doing anymore. Everything I learned about communication wasn't working, and I needed to do something different. So the cascading effect of that decision was that at times when I found myself dissatisfied or unhappy with what was happening in our relationship, I couldn't allow myself to just react the way that I had before. I had to really like pause and take a look at what was happening for me, where this was coming from, what I was really feeling, what was behind this, right? And as I did, I became more aware of how it was my own shit that was showing up and affecting the way that I was experiencing him and what he was giving and our relationship, right? It was stories that I was telling myself that I could tell myself differently if I took his perspective. It was beliefs I had about, how it was supposed to be. It was expectations, right? All of those shoulds. It was also my fears and insecurities that if it didn't go that way, like maybe it wouldn't work, maybe I'd be unhappy, blah, blah, blah. Fear and insecurity, right? And it was criticism, it was judgment, right? Those, again, the shoulds that came up. And as much as I hate to admit it, there was also parts of my unhappiness that were about my desire to be in control, to like know that I could influence him. And my belief that the way I wanted to do things, the way I thought we should be doing things was the right way. After all, I learned this in school and blah, 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 right? So as I recognized though that this was my stuff, my beliefs, not the only beliefs, my way of doing things, not the only way of doing things, my fears and insecurities, not capital T truth, my experience, not objective reality. I had to own that, right? Like I had to own all of those pieces, which wasn't easy, but it helped me, even just having a awareness of that, to like start to settle my own inner stuff, my reactivity, and connect my heart to my ultimate desire to be a really great partner to this man that I loved so much. How I was acting was hurting him. And when I got into that place of like, oh, right, then I could shift my emotional energy. I was able to soften and become less defensive. I started asking powerful questions like, what might his perspective be? What's my part in this? How can I be a part of the solution? And from those questions, I found myself empowered, right? I found myself able and wanting to step into the relationship differently, with more love, with more personal accountability, with more consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And, as she did that, it had an impact on me. Mm-hmm. I started to feel safer, less judged, more supported, more loved. And then it created some motivation and inspiration for me to create change within myself too. Mm-hmm. Like I wanted to give more. I had energy to do that, capacity. I was more willing to look at myself in my own mirror and recognize some of my own shit from present, I was going through a lot of the time, and past, and how it kind of like created me in my brain. And those were things that were making it hard, really, for me to be able to give more. And it really wasn't that I couldn't. Mm-hmm. So I began to really start also to understand from her point of view and see how what I was doing or saying was impacting and affecting her. And so it shifted me into compassion and made me want to love her better.
So that is the skill of empowered accountability in action, right? And when we were both doing it, our relationship and the entire way of being in the world improved. Because you don't start changing this you don't start owning your shit and just get better in this relationship, right? Mm-hmm. It affects so many of our relationships.
Exactly. And specifically in our relationship, like before we knew it, our relationship had transformed. So it just kept, like, positive interactions just kept building on one another. Mm-hmm. To the point where, we've been conflict free for years. Our relationship is fun and easy and feels indestructible and mm-hmm. like better than what we had imagined a relationship could feel or look like. So in short, like, empowered accountability made our relationship extraordinary. Yeah.
So I hope you're following this so far. But we want to take a couple minutes to talk about and acknowledge the part about empowered accountability that isn't easy, which is lots of it, right? This is not a skill that comes, I think, really naturally to us. And so we want to like contrast it with what we're going to call the old way of doing things, right? So the old way, which is that process we described before of pointing your finger at your partner, wanting them to change, is actually hardwired into our nervous system, right? Our brain is programmed for our survival, not our thriving. And in that survival, when we are hurt or unhappy or there is a perceived threat in the world, our brain identifies an external source as the cause of that and puts us into a position of self-protection, right? Empowered accountability, on the other hand, it requires our consciousness, right? It's not going to be automatic until you do it a whole bunch of times. So we have to bring conscious attention. We have to make like powerful choices and decisions. And, when we're in the old way and that hardwired reaction happens, the self-protective places put us into defend, attack, withdraw, right? In contrast, empowered accountability asks us to be in places of allowing, receiving, admitting, and connection. These are vulnerable places, right? We don't have the wall up. We don't have the protection in place. So empowered accountability feels a lot more vulnerable, but doing it the old way, even though uncomfortable and you may be unhappy, actually to our nervous system feels safer. Furthermore, when you're doing it the old way, it requires a lot less work. You get to hide in your like self-protection barrier and you're asking them to do the work to change. When it's safe out there, then I'll come out, right? You make it safe and then I'll feel better. But the empowered accountability way is more effort. We have to do the work. And then we have to do the work from a vulnerable place. Oh my God, right? This is not easy. I'll add too that in the old way, we're attempting to control and influence another person, right? We always want to control our environment, right? We all do. We want to control what's happening around us because that creates a sense of safety in our world, right? Empowered accountability asks us to let go of control, to not try to control, and instead just turn our attention to changing and growing ourselves. That is really uncomfortable, right? The old way, like I said, maybe you don't feel happy, but actually your anger, frustration, even exhaustion is a more comfortable emotion than the fear that can come with stepping into the unknown. And a lot of the unknowns are about, what about them, right? Is this going to work? If I just focus on myself and I'm not, demanding or insisting that they do this, or I'm not withdrawing and hiding in my cave, like, how do I know that I'm not going to get hurt? Because I'm not asking them to stop hurting me. And am I going to get stuck doing all the work?
Yeah.
But what we've found and what we really want you to know is that this stuff does work. If you can do this, if you can move into empowered accountability, your relationship will start to shift. And when you get good at doing it, your relationship will powerfully and dramatically transform.
Right. So, let's spend a little bit more time, though, talking about the legit concern that you'll end up doing all of the work.
Right.
Because maybe you're the one who's already feeling like you are doing the work, and or maybe doing the work, right?
And we hear this one a lot when we talk about empowered accountability, right? Like, this feels like one of the number one fears that comes up. I'm already doing work, or I don't want to be the only one, or I shouldn't have to be the only one. Relationships should be equal. Right?
Yeah, and the thing about that is, though, that most of the work that's being done is not effective work because it's truly grounded and rooted in the old way that we've been talking about. The truth is that when you're coming from a place of empowered accountability, it's actually the most effective way to invite your partner into change, because they're going to feel safer, they're going to feel more loved, and as a result, they're going to not be in self-protection, they're not going to be in defensive mode. And when people are not in self-protection, defensive mode, they're able to step up into being their best self.
That's where
or a better version of themselves, right?
Right. That's where the magic happens.
And so, the other thing here to remember is that they love you. You love each other. Like, think back to the time when, you first said, I love you. Like, it's kind of a big deal, right? And So remember that, and remember that feeling, and remember that you want them to feel happy and loved as much as you want it for yourself, right?
And they want it for you.
True. Yes. Sorry, I meant that too.
Yeah. Right. But
yeah. Thank you.
You made good points also, right? Yeah. But that's so important to remember, right? And that's why, like, yeah, maybe you're doing more of the work first. You're going to be the one first. But when they see that, right, like you're helping them feel more loved and more safe, and they're feeling better, they love you too. So they're going to want to do the same for you. It's reciprocal. Mm-hmm. That's love, guys, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, one last point to this that I think is really important to make is that empowered accountability also includes making a direct ask for what you want or need, or expressing your hurt and needing repair and accountability. Mm-hmm. It does not imply that you're doing all the work without asking anything from your partner and they just get to be and act however they are, right? Mm-hmm. If there's something you really need, or if there's something they're doing that's hurting you, it's necessary that you share that. Mm-hmm. That's part of empowered accountability. But the difference is that through an empowered accountability skill set, you're going to do those things more effectively. You're going to be more conscious and intentional. You're going to be more compassionate, non-defensive, non-threatening. You're going to be willing to set them up for success in meeting your needs. You're going to help them to meet your needs, so you can be a team and not one against the other, but you're coming together like, this isn't working to me. How can we work together so that this can work for me better? And also, work for you.
Work for you.
And
help me help you.
Right. And you're offering accountability of your own. And that feels so much better to hear from a partner who is receiving feedback about how they're not doing what you want or meeting your needs, or how they've fucked up, frankly. To hear like, this is my experience, this is what I need from you, and also here's my part. Mm-hmm. Here's how I can help, and here's how I recognize I played a part in this too. It's just like, right? How would that feel if you heard your partner say that, like, instead of what they've been saying?
Right. So empowered accountability is really the key to creating extraordinary relationships. And even beyond that, it's transformative within your own personal growth and expansion in life. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just that relationship it touches. Yeah. There's so many more things, that we like to share about this, and just realizing the time. Yeah. We don't want to take up much more of your time going through empowered accountability, but we do know how you can learn more.
Yeah. So we'll just end by saying that this idea is really a cornerstone of our Be the One coaching program. Where we support our individuals and couples in mastering empowered accountability in their own life. We've broken it down into 5 simple steps. We help folks step into their power and really be the catalyst to transforming their relationship. Mm-hmm. And so we just wanted to put that out there in case you are interested in learning more, you're looking for support yourself, or you know someone who is. Yeah. We have our website and email in the description, hopefully, of the live once it posts, for those of you who are watching the replay.
Powerful Love, 1L.
Yes, Powerful Love, that's us, our business. But that said, it's been really a pleasure and an honor to have an opportunity to show up for y'all. Thank you, Mallory, for the invitation.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you all for tuning in and investing the time and energy to take another step in your own relationship growth. That's a really big deal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, for however great or challenging a relationship is, we hope it only gets better from here.
That's right. Thank you.